Okay, good morning, and thank you all for coming to our press conference this morning. We're here to discuss an open invitation from American Muslim organizations to the Republican Party, asking them to examine the current relationship and explore ways to move forward. I'm Corey Saylor. I'm the National Legislative Director for the Council on American Islamic Relations. I will make a quick overview of the content of the letter, and then I'll introduce each of our speakers in turn. We've asked them to keep their remarks fairly brief, and then we'll open it up for questions. So the letter itself essentially explores two main constitutional issues that the American Muslim community sees coming, particularly from the Republican Party. And the first thing we focus on in the letter is the fact that over the last 2 years, there have been 78 anti-Islam bills introduced in state legislatures and in the U.S. Congress, 73 of which were sponsored solely by Republicans. That leads to a lot of concern that this is not coming from fringe legislators. So these are bills that, in contradiction to the First Amendment of the United States, target a particular religious faith, whether they do so in the language of the bill or that's the background discussion. And they all too often have the support of mainstream Republican Party leadership. So in Oklahoma, the Governor Fallin was behind the bill there. In Alaska, you had the head of the House Judiciary Committee speaking in favor of it. In Missouri, you had the House Speaker speaking in favor of the bill. So that is one particular constitutional concern that this community has in being targeted by Republicans. The second one really showed its head during the early presidential debates among the Republican Party, where you had Herman Cain in particular, who was a front runner. Newt Gingrich also did this. But Cain said specifically that Muslims who wanted to serve in his administration would have to take some kind of a loyalty oath. Now, Article 6 of the U.S. Constitution prohibits religious tests for public office. And so Cain really should have been essentially laughed off the stage for saying things that were in contradiction to the Constitution, and instead what he got was applause and support from party members and really no pushback whatsoever from the party leadership. So to quickly sum up the letter, those are the two core constitutional issues we're talking about here when we say that the Republican Party needs to consider its approach to the American Muslim community. We make 5 very specific recommendations. The party needs to speak out against bias within its own ranks. Far too often that's been overlooked. The Republicans need to make a concerted effort to engage Muslim voices or Muslim voters. Republicans need to oppose efforts to pass these discriminatory legislation instead of being behind it. They need to reject efforts to use public forums to smear minorities, and in particular we would point to Congressman Peter King's anti-Muslim hearings. There were 5 of them held between 2011 and 2012. He should have been told by the leadership in the House, no, that kind of smearing is something more for the 1950s or the history of this country and not something that belongs in the present. And then finally, we're asking the Republican Party to end the persistent witch hunt of Muslim organizations that we see coming from its ranks, most recently manifest in Michelle Bachmann attempting to smear any Muslim who has come forward to serve their country in the public sector. So with that said, that's the outline of the letter. I will now introduce our speakers. Our first speaker is Mr. Nihad Awad. He is the National Executive Director with the Council on American Islamic Relations.
Thank you, Corey. And I would like to thank representatives of our national organizations who joined us today at this important press conference. A little bit about the letter. The letter was composed and was meant to be published in the Washington Times because it is mainly read by conservatives. And we wanted to make sure that the community puts resources in making sure that our position is made known and distributed and hopefully read and reflected on by the leadership of the Republican Party. The signers on this letter, we believe, represents the overwhelming majority of American Muslims across the board in the United States. And therefore, this open letter reflects the sentiments, the concerns, but also the hopes of American Muslims vis-a-vis the relationship with the Republican Party. Corey mentioned the core issues that we addressed in this letter, but also I would like to emphasize a couple of issues. Number one, the anti-Muslim legislation that have been introduced in the past 2 years. Many of them are going to be reintroduced in 2013. So far, 73 of these legislation out of 78 are and have been introduced by a Republican legislature nationwide. And this is very unfortunate. That means 93% of the anti-Muslim legislation have been introduced by Republican legislators. And this is very concerning to us and should be a message to the Republican Party to decide, are they going to be the party of bigots and the party that fights the religious rights of another minority like the American Muslims, or are they going to be helping the nation to be on the right course by being inclusive and respect people irrespective of their ethnicity, their religious belief, or political orientation? Number two, we are not talking about fringe members of the Republican Party. We're talking about core leadership of the Republican Party who have been using their platform to attack American Muslims, question their loyalty, and attack their faith. And we believe this is un-American and even un-Republican, because the Republican Party was not like this. And this announcement today is an open invitation for them to reassess their positions and work with the American Muslim community. The third point is many of these members have lost the election, like Allen West, Adam Hansner, Paul Walsh, and few others. And that shows that American voters reject Islamophobia because it is divisive and does not help the country. For those who stayed in office by a small margin, like Michelle Bachmann, that is a message to her, that she should not use or abuse her position and the trust that the voters gave her to do the business of the people, rather than attacking a Muslim community that has been working hard to make this country greater. America is the land of new beginnings. And the American people need two things: constructive action on major problems facing the country, and return to civic discussion. So we hope that the Republican Party will see this as an opportunity to move forward with the American Muslims. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nihad. Our next speaker is Mr. Usama Jamal. He is the chairman of the Muslim American Society Public Affairs Civic Engagement.
Thank you, Corey. The Muslim American Society Public Affairs and Civic Engagement joins hand with the member organizations of the Muslim community in extending an invitation to the Republican Party to reassess its views and relationship with the Muslim American community. Traditionally and historically, we had a good relationship, but the unfortunate influence of extreme views have distorted this relationship. The Muslim American Society is part of the American society, and there should be no discrimination or demonization of any Americans because of their religious belief or because of their background. The practice that we have noticed in the recent years by the Republican Party did not reflect the basis, the values that the Republican Party stands for, and as well as the Democratic Party. So we hope that this is an opportunity as we face the challenges that face our country, are more important than the divisive views of one another, that we join hands and look forward and work together to improve the life of American people and respect the...
Learn more at CAIR.com.